Have you ever driven a road and wondered, why did they build it? How did they build it? It's easy to take them for granted, and sometimes hard to imagine a time when they did not exist. Many roads have interesting stories of their beginnings and are the force by which society has shaped the land, developed commerce, and modern culture. The Alaska Highway is one such road that has made such an impact on the present-day society of the North, and to travelers like us, makes vehicular exploration possible to some amazing and remote places. One month into our trip, we were planning to leave Fort Nelson and head into some of the most remote terrain we had visited yet. It was a good 300 miles to the next affordable fuel and groceries, so we stocked up before we left. The next leg of our drive would take us through the northern Rockies, the same mountain range that runs south of Colorado in the States, all the way up to Banff and Jasper that we had visited earlier, and continues all the way to northern Alaska. We had allotted 4 nights to spend along the Alaska Highway in this area between Fort Nelson, British Columbia, and Watson Lake in the Yukon. Our drive started out very exciting, with lots of bears along the roadsides, munching on the spring grasses. We were glad that we finally picked up some bear spray while we were in Fort Nelson. The road started to wind into the mountains, and we came across our first Cinnabon of the drive. The Alaska Highway is known for all the small bakeries along the way that claim to offer the best Cinnabons. Signs leading up to the Tetsa River Lodge stated best Cinnabons in the galactic cluster, so we had to stop. With Cinnabon in hand, we headed up the road to our first destination at Summit Lake to hike the Flowering Spring Trail. The trailhead is located at the beautiful Summit Lake Campground, a small campground right at the end of the Summit Lake that made a great place to consume a few calories of incredible Cinnabon before starting the hike. The actual start of the trail was a few kilometers up a gated 2-track, so we opted to shorten the walk by taking our bikes up the trail. We just biked up to the trailhead here at Flower Springs Lake.
Took us about 20 minutes to get up here, and it was about 2.2 kilometers, so I definitely think we saved some time riding the bikes. It was a little grueling, but we're going to very much enjoy coasting down the hill when this hike is done.
Let's go see if that lake is not frozen over.
Yes, interesting.
The trail from there was 2.5 kilometers up into the tundra to the Flowering Springs Lake. Based on the tracks through the remaining snow on the hike, we figured that we were some of the first hikers on the trail for the season, and sure enough, the lake was still frozen solid. Regardless of this, the hike was incredible. Along the way, at a long distance, we also saw our first wild caribou. After zipping back to the truck on our bikes, we headed further into the mountains and found our first campsite along a creek. While there are a few campgrounds along the way, we chose to stay in the numerous turnouts, 2-tracks, and pull-offs, as many of them make amazing quiet places to camp. The next day, we rolled up the road, stopping briefly at the Toad River Lodge, which offers camping, a restaurant, and lodging accommodations along the Toad River. Uniquely, they have a collection of over 11,000 hats from visitors hanging from the ceiling that were fascinating to look over. A few miles up the road beyond Toad River, we turned off to explore an access road that took us into the Muskwa Kechika management area. We were told at the Fort Nelson Visitor Center that this would be a 4x4 road, so we dropped the camper at the entrance and plied our way into the wilderness on this rough, narrow road. The Muskwa Kechika management area is a vast tract of land surrounding the Alaska Highway here and encompasses over 15 million acres that is managed in a special way to protect the environment and cultural heritage of the area while still allowing for natural resource extraction, making sure that it will have minimal impact. With the road passing through it and making access easier, we could see the importance of appropriately managing such a delicate ecosystem to protect the existing landscape while benefiting the economy. Our 4x4 road started to get steep and slippery, and we almost turned around as the dually was too wide for the thick willows reaching into the road. Not sure how much further the road went, we came across a few people on a side-by-side that encouraged us to continue.
So we just spoke with those folks who just came down there side by side, which we're extremely jealous of. They say we're about 2 kilometers from the top, and they said that you can make it through. The snow isn't, all the way across the road or anything like the other people told us. So we might try it in the truck. And they said there's plenty of room up there to turn around, and the view is spectacular. I think we might go for it now.
We pushed it up the steep, frightening road and came to a microwave relay tower at the top.
We made it!
We made it.
You seem a little stressed out.
I'm a little stressed out right now.
The building was powered by an unmuffled diesel engine and sounded like a helicopter, but a short walk along a high mountain ridge rewarded us with amazing 360-degree views. While the going on this road was very slow, we loved being so far out and away from everything, where so few people came.
Do you want to get that porcupine? I think he'd get you back.
As our off-road adventure had taken us all day, we stayed where we dropped the camper at the trailhead before picking it back up the next morning to continue on down the road. A few miles up the road, we finally came upon what we had been hoping to see for so long, one of the teal blue-green lakes that these mountains are known for, without ice. This was Muncho Lake, and we could not believe the color. We had not planned to stay here, but as the day was warm, we could not help but settle in at the McDonald campground for a night to fully experience these waters. We spent the whole day lazing around this amazing body of water. We let our water-loving dog Mocha play in the water and even tried a little fishing for the first time on the trip without any success. We thought about swimming, but the water temperature was just above freezing, as we had been told that the lake was ice covered just a few days prior to our arrival.
Ah, gosh, yeah, I can't swim in this. Ow! Oh! Oh! I don't know how you're in that, dog. Oh.
She's like shivering out there.
Settling in for the night, we made a homemade pizza in our oven. We have always preferred to make meals at home and have been finding the kitchen in our RV to be quite adequate for most everything we've wanted to make. The lake slowly lit up in the most spectacular sunset that lasted almost all night as we were getting so far north in midsummer. The next day we headed north, stopping at a trailhead labeled Mineral Licks. The trail took us out to a steep hillside with interesting eroded features overlooking the Trout River. These eroded hills are the Mineral Licks.
These mineral licks here are really cool. They're like badlandy almost, and this is what they call rock flour. It is really, really tiny particulates of rock that are ground up by the glaciers. They make their way down to the lakes, rivers, and streams, and it's deposited around here and has lots and lots and lots of minerals that the hoofed animals around here really like to come and lick because they need these minerals to grow their bones, antlers, and hooves. And there's just tracks all around here of the wildlife. Unfortunately, we haven't seen any.
Heading north again after our hike, we saw one of the animals that might frequent these mineral licks. A stone sheep licking minerals from the road. A short distance later, we also saw a bunch of woodland bison that live in this area. We crossed the Liard River on the only remaining suspension bridge on the Alaska Highway and made it to our next stop, the Liard River Hot Springs. It costs $5 per person to visit the hot springs, but you can stay all day. We parked, made some lunch, then headed for the springs.
We've made it to Liard Hot Springs and we are going to go enjoy a soak. It is a beautiful day here. It's actually probably close to 90 degrees out, but hot soak in the mineral waters is good any day.
The walk to the springs is along a boardwalk over a marshy area of beautiful and unique plants due to the warm spring waters. The springs are a natural pool with a gravel bottom and earthen sides. A deck, changing room, and restrooms are built along the side in a very rustic and attractive fashion. The water bubbles up at one end hotter than we could stand and cools towards the far end, so you can choose exactly how hot you want the water.
We've been having a lovely time here at the hot springs. The water is very, very hot. At one end, it's much hotter than the other, but it's so incredibly relaxing. The air has a faint smell of sulfur, which is to be expected from most hot springs, but for the most part, it's not that bad. The water is just so, you can feel a little bit of the minerals on you when you come out. We've just been loving it. It's probably one of the nicest hot springs we've ever been to.
We enjoyed the springs so much that we made dinner in the parking lot and visited the springs for a second time before leaving, having spent the entire afternoon here. Relaxed as we could be, we left the hot springs late and headed up the road to find our next campsite. We followed a road to the Smith River Falls, which we had been wanting to see, and found a small spot off the road that made for a good overnight stop, with the sound of the raging falls in the distance. The next morning, we packed some fishing gear and took the short but very steep hike down to the water near the falls to enjoy a day picnicking and fishing along the water's edge. Here, I caught my first fish of the trip, an Arctic grayling.
Oh, he's a beauty.
On the road again, the Rockies started to disappear into rolling foothills, and we officially left British Columbia. We had thoroughly enjoyed the Northern Rockies corridor section of our drive, and we were a bit sad to see the mountains fading behind us. We stopped for the night in the town of Watson Lake to reprovision and visit the famous Signpost forest that this town is known for. This was started by a man named Carl Lindley, a US soldier who was tasked with repairing directional signs when the road was first put in. Missing home, he erected a sign that gave the direction and miles to his hometown of Danville, Illinois at this location, and many others followed suit. Today, over 77,000 signs reside in the forest. It's easy to spend hours looking over the signs that have accumulated from all over the world. While there, we also visited the Watson Lake Visitor Center, where they have a museum and even a film about the construction of the Alaska Highway. It was fascinating to learn the history of this amazing road we had spent so much time on, and is the main overland connection from Alaska to the rest of the continent. The Alaska Highway runs about 1,400 miles from Dawson Creek, British Columbia to Fairbanks, Alaska. It was constructed during World War II to connect Alaska to the contiguous United States, primarily to enable defense of the region by connecting the aircraft landing strips that were already in place in the remote wilderness. Known as the ALCAN, or the Alaska-Canada Highway, it was first built by 10,000 Army Corps of Engineers soldiers in an astoundingly short 8 months. Over the years, improvements have been made to the road, and it was officially opened to the public in 1948. After rolling out of town along the Alaska Highway, looking around at the terrain, we imagine the challenges that the construction crews must have faced out here. We drove a few hours north, crossed over the bridge at Teslin River, and stopped at Johnson's Crossing to fill up with fuel and get a Yukon fishing license in preparation for our most adventurous drive yet. We crossed back over the river and set off down the remote Canol Road, 226 kilometers of minimally maintained road that little did we know would hold some very unexpected challenges.